Hi, this is Bill Nimmons, the IT Director for Leon County Schools, and I want to take a little bit of time and talk about computer security awareness. This is something that you've not thought about before. Given the threats that are out there today, everyone needs to be very familiar with security and what you need to be doing to protect yourself and protecting Leon County Schools information as well. So in this presentation, I'll cover what is computer security and why is it important to you. Then we'll also talk about why you need to learn more about computer security so that you can protect yourself and the resources that you have access to on the computer. We'll talk about the internet can be a hazardous place, there's no doubt about that, but can also be a very helpful place. And then go over some security tips that you can use both at work and at home. And if you'll listen to these kind of things and do these kind of things, then you'll make your experience on the internet much safer. So what is computer security and why is it important? Well, first, computer security is talking about taking care of the computer system itself, making sure it's not susceptible to viruses and hacks and things like that. But most importantly, what you're really trying to protect is the data on that system. That's what you're really concerned about. That's the kind of thing that can do damage for example, from a business perspective or from a personal perspective. If for some reason, let's say you kept your tax return out there and your system was hacked and they'd have your tax return. And then we all deal with different sensitive information, but one of the biggies is, the loss of this kind of data from a business perspective is that can have legal and financial repercussions as well. And importantly for us, being in a K-12 education, is something called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which means that the student data is protected. If you're dealing with student data, you have to be very careful of that, and there's very specific rules about when you can give that data to anyone else. So that's what we're talking about here today, and we'll talk more about that in the next slide. So why do you need to learn about computer security? Number one reason that it goes to the 90-10 rule. This isn't just an IT problem. I can only do so many things, but 90% of what needs to be done to protect our computers and our data is related to what you do. Because, we can put virus checkers, we can make sure that the network is secure, but then you have to start thinking about what some of these folks do out there called social engineering, where they may call you up and somehow get you to give your password to them, or phishing, which is a major source where you get an email and again says, can you give me user ID and password so I can fix this problem for you. Those are the kind of things that depend upon you being aware enough to not fall for those kind of phishing attacks, as I would call them. So what does that mean for you? Computer security is everyone's responsibility, not just mine in my position, but you every day as you sit down on that computer. And you have to be aware that, by using the Leon County School computer system, you're responsible for moving yourself and complying with all our school policies and procedures related to information security. The internet can be a hazardous place, but this is not something you should be afraid of because the internet is such a wonderful resource. But what you have to be is just aware of your surroundings. Make sure you're on guard for anything that's unusual, like an email that has an attachment from someone, it's the email sent to you from someone you really don't know and it has this attachment. Do you really want to open that? That's the kind of things you have to think about. An email asking for your user ID and password is another favorite kind of thing that these folks will do. And you just have to say, should I respond to this with this kind of sensitive information? And so if you're unsure or you think a compromise has occurred, first let us know at the help desk. And one of the more important things, typically what they're going to do is they're going to get your user ID and password. And if that happens, then you just need to reset your password as soon as possible. But we'll talk about more about the tips, the security tips that can help you avoid some of these pitfalls out there. So the first security tip I want to talk about is be aware of phishing. Now phishing is where they'll send things like unsolicited emails or an email to you to see if you'll take the bait and answer the email by providing sensitive data that they've asked for in email. Here's a couple other things. In unsolicited emails, you'll get links that if you click them, they're going to take you somewhere that you don't want to go. So you have to be aware, did I ask for this email? Does this email seem to be safe to click this link? And if you don't think so, don't click the link. There's also attachments. Again, if this is coming from someone you don't know, you didn't solicit the email, then you have to say to yourself, is it safe to click that attachment? And if you're unsure, the best thing to do is just don't click the attachment. Be aware of scams. Don't respond to emails, instant messages, texts, phone calls, or anything that asks you for your password. I make the analogy that if you're walking down the street and someone came up and said, hey, will you give me your social security number? You wouldn't do that, and your password is like your signature today. I can't emphasize enough, your password is your signature because we now do electronic signing, and typically how you sign a document electronically is in today's computer-based world is through your user ID and password. And if you give away your password, you've given away your signature. Don't do that. And if you happen to have fallen for something, the first thing you want to do is go change your password immediately and let us know what happened. The next thing we're going to ask you to do is when you leave your computer, either it's in your office or your classroom, never leave it on and unattended. So when you leave, either shut it down, lock it, or log off so no one can come behind you and get to information that may be sensitive and you don't want other people to know. Another tip is if you go to a website that's asking you, and this is for home as well as work, and it's asking you for maybe your credit card information and things like that, you should always look for the S in the HTTPS. You should see that. That means it's a secure link, and you always want to see that before giving out any information over the internet through a web browser that may be sensitive to you personally or sensitive at work as well. A good example of any site where you're trying to pay for something, you need to see that S. I talked about protecting your password like you would your social security number in the earlier slide, and I'm going to re-emphasize it again. If you think you've done that, you've given it out, you're not sure if you should, well, first of all, you should not do that. If you've done that, then go and change your password immediately. That will minimize any compromise that may have occurred. Use strong passwords. Use letters, numbers, and special characters. Anything that makes that stronger is important because there's plenty of programs out there that can crack simple passwords, and that's why you need to use more complex passwords. Another security tip, be careful where you store sensitive files. Today we have a lot of ways of storing information. A very common one are these we call memory keys. The problem with memory keys is that what happens? You lose them. You put it in your pocket, you leave it somewhere, you may leave it on a desk somewhere. They're great devices, they store a lot of information, but understand these things are easy to lose, and therefore you should never store any sensitive files, not even your own sensitive files, on anything like this. At work, we want you to store your sensitive files, or all your files typically, in OneDrive, which is the online cloud storage that we have that's very business class, it has business class security built into it, or our network drive as well that are secure. So please, when you're dealing with files that are sensitive, be very careful where you're storing them. We've all heard about the VA that lost a laptop out there. Don't be storing sensitive files on devices that you're carrying around and you could possibly lose. Store them in a secure location. Also make sure that your critical files are stored where they're being backed up. Don't store files on your desktop. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if something goes wrong with your computer at work and we can't figure out what it is, we're going to have to re-image it. If you stored it to your desktop and we re-image, that file will be lost. Okay? So please make sure you're storing your files either on a network drive or, more important today, on your OneDrive. And if you haven't seen that yet, or you hadn't heard about OneDrive, you will in the near future. Avoid freeware or shareware websites, because that's typically where all these viruses are hiding. You download that free piece of software and they're just all over that kind of thing. So you really want to be very careful what you're downloading free or shareware type things from the internet, because that's where you'll find a lot of your viruses. Also, and this is not necessarily at work, because at work we have security built into our wireless connections, but when you're out about out in places in town where they offer free wireless, Be very careful. You really don't know if they have any security set up. Typically, you know they have some if they require a password to get on. But if it's not even requiring a password to get on, then that's probably not a site that you want to do anything other than maybe just browse. You really don't want to be doing anything sensitive when you're on a wireless network like that. All Leon County school computers that we use have antivirus software loaded on them, but this applies, I'm trying to do things that make you think not just about at work, but at home or wherever you happen to be, that you need antivirus software on your computer. If you don't have it at home, I highly recommend that you go and download it. There are some free software programs out there. There's quite a few actually. All you have to do is look for it. But make sure you're running antivirus software. Secure your laptops and computer devices at all times. Lock them up. Don't leave them unattended in a car, in an unlocked car. Carry them with you, and just always be cognizant when you're carrying around a high-dollar device like that. Number one, you don't leave it somewhere because then you're liable for the loss of that device. But also understand that these things can disappear, and we don't want that to happen. And so that's why in the previous slide where I talked about don't store anything sensitive on these devices, if you do that, at least if you lose a device, you don't have to worry about something sensitive being on that device. Please make sure that any computing device that you use, like a tablet, an example of that would be an iPad or your phone, has a security lock feature set. Typically most devices say, give me a 4-digit code to get in. I can't emphasize enough, you should not have a device that doesn't do that. Otherwise, if you leave it somewhere, they can get in and take advantage of whatever you happen to have installed on that device. So my advice is make sure you always put a code on your phone, your iPad, your tablet, whatever it might be, so at least if you left it laying somewhere or lost it, they're not going to get into your data easily. Finally, I have to say one last time, the information security is your responsibility. Please make sure you take this responsibility seriously. Thank you and have a great day.